And for those who enjoy this channel and would love to support us financially, please feel free to hit that donate link. We'd greatly appreciate it. God bless.
It
No,
only works.
That's right.
It works if you assume the long ages. That is not assuming that you are, so you think it works for you.
Yeah,
Is it?
I agree.
Oh, see,
But
if you already had that assumption, correct?
We don't assume
Yeah.
it. We radiometrically date it.
I mean,
Radiometric dating.
There's a basis for that assumption, but after you establish the age and the long timelines, then you take that since it's already established, you take that assumption into the next
test.
Yeah, then well, I was trying to think of it as in a logical order. The next I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. But this is the thing, right? Like he's trying to debunk the theory of evolution, which incorporates these long periods of time. You can't assume the short periods in debunking a theory that establishes long periods.
It's a straw man.
Yeah, he's acting like our argument falls apart as if it includes the short times when our argument doesn't include the short times.
So Taylor said radiometric dating supports it, correct?
Yeah. There's like 20 dating methods that support it.
Yes, but don't you know that those dating methods all have assumptions? Can you do it without any assumptions?
I wouldn't say they have any assumptions, no.
Starting conditions, for example.
I don't believe that's true, no, because
it's an assumption on the same level as you're assuming that you exist. It's very well established.
So
yeah, I can see the chemistry.
It's an assumption still. You see
how much chemistry have you taken? Like, what's your level of understanding?
If you see these isotopes decaying like that, when do we start the countdown, right? When
the igneous rock is formed and it crystallizes, that's when we can tell. That's when the countdown starts.
No, I mean rocks that we don't observe. When does the countdown start? And are we sure that there are no contaminations? How can we know if they're contaminated or not? Isochron, can we use the isochron method on this? Familiar with the isochron, Taylor?
Sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Never mind. But the fact here is, if I'm an evolutionist, when I look at radiometric dating, I will have to make certain assumptions, educated guesses. Good guess, educated guesses, but still guesses. There are windows of errors involved with those assumptions.
It's based on a known decay rate of what down to the single particle.
But why do you assume a constant decay rate? Are you sure the decay rates are constant? What we see today are what also the decay rates in the past? What if an asteroid hit the Earth, okay, and then contaminated these rocks, accelerating their decay rates? What if? Or a volcano erupts, okay, and affects the decay rates of the rocks, right? So we are not sure. If I'm an evolutionist, I will be comfortable with these assumptions. I will say, yes, these are powerful evidence of evolution, of long ages. But still, there is a window for error there. That is something to acknowledge. And
you're adding the assumption if you're going to assume that it changes, because what we observe is every time we see the same element has the same decay rate.
Yes, but what makes you so sure that it's also the same decay rate in the past?
There's no reason. You need to provide a reason to believe otherwise.
I already did. An asteroid impact, for example, contaminating the rocks, or a massive volcanic activity worldwide.
How is a volcano or a comet supposed to irradiate something to the point where it accelerates the decay of uranium?
Wait, excuse me.
See, now I've heard this debunked before, and I have to admit I really don't understand it. But you can easily Google this stuff. And I can read this paragraph here. Maybe you can make sense of it, Taylor. It says, with isochrone dating, we also measure a different isotope of the same element as the daughter, and we take measurements of several different minerals that formed at the same time from the same pool of materials. Instead of assuming a known amount of the daughter isotope, we only assume that the D over D2 is initial, and I'm guessing that's the daughter isotope of two different samples, is initially the same in all samples. Plotting P over D2, which is parent over daughter 2, on the x-axis and daughter over daughter 2 on the y-axis for several different samples gives a line that is initially horizontal. Over time, as P decays to D, the line remains straight, but its slope increases. The age of the sample can be calculated from the slope, and the initial concentration of the daughter element D is given by where the line meets the y-axis. If D over D2 is not initially the same in all samples, the data points tend to scatter on the isochrone diagram rather than falling on a straight line. So if they fall on a straight line, then you know the starting conditions, right? Like, so we have a way. I don't understand a lot of that, but basically they have a way of establishing the starting conditions.
Basically, the isochrone method is several dating methods revealing the same result using several dating methods. And then when they give more or less dates, then we can tell this.
No, you're not. Okay, so the isochrone dating method, it assumes the starting condition, right? But what they
Well,
say,
it doesn't actually. That's the advantage.
well, it says it like if you have one sample, you would have to assume the starting condition. But when you have multiple samples and you compare this XY axis of the P over D2, that part I don't understand. But apparently, when you compare that, if they fall on a straight line, then you know the starting conditions. If they don't fall on a straight line, then the starting conditions are questionable. Is that right?
Yeah, like I said, when they more or less reveal the same date, then yes, we could assume the starting condition is correct. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so then you agree that the dating method works.
I'm not saying that. Sorry.
So you agree that the dating method works then?
Yes, but not. There are still window of error.
Well, yeah, but that's why we have multiple dating methods.
Yes, but for example, there are. This is the Grand Canyon, right? There are rocks. For example, I forgot the details of these. There are rocks down here that are supposed to be older, but the isochrone method, that's using the isochrone method, by the way. There are rocks down here. I forgot which layer. There are 6 mega sequence of rock layers, correct? There's a rock layer down here, which is supposed to be older than the rock layer above, several rock layers above. But instead, it's different. The rock layer up there is sorry for my English. The rock layer up there turns in this isochrone method turns out to be older. Let me find it for you. Hang on, you guys talk.
Yeah, but there could be a natural explanation for that. I'm not familiar with that sample.
And there's also
just because something might get shifted on top of the other, one on top of the other, doesn't mean the dating methods are wrong.
No, I just mean that the window, because sometimes the dates given, the resulting dates vary a lot. It's not just 100 million years like that. It's a billion years sometimes. Look at how you date the moon. Some dating methods reveal it by.
Do you think that the chemists and geologists haven't thought of these concerns?
I know, right?
Yeah, of course they did. That is why they invented the isochrone method. Right, Taylor? You said you don't know the isochrone. So because they thought about the initial condition thing, they invented the isochrone method.
Well,
But the isochrone,
he's saying that this thing with the stuff that's layered wrong in the Grand Canyon. He's saying, don't you think that they've probably already considered what you're saying?
this Grand Canyon thing, I'm not sure if they did or did not.
So you just look stuff up on like a creationist website and you never look.
No. This is not a creationist thing. I read this in the evolutionary literature a long time ago, but it seems like nobody bothered to.
But if it was in mainstream literature, why would there not be at least a hypothesis for it?
Because they said that the differences are isn't significant. So the
difference in dating.
But you just said the differences were so massive. You said it was millions of years.
For the moon. For the moon. Right? I said the moon. Yeah, the moon. Some dating methods reveal 5 billion, some 10 billion, some 20 billion, right? I think you guys know that.
I thought we were talking about the Grand Canyon.
Asteroid
It
explosion.
is. We are talking about the dating methods on a more or less reliable. But as long as there is a window for error, that is enough to question it.
What?
So the moon doesn't have volcanic activity.
What we're going to do here, just because we've only got another, because I said for the after show, we got about an hour after Taylor and I's debate. Just bring up the fossil ordering real quick. Go back and forth with Jeremy on that. Since that was kind of your main point at the start of this, and you can jump in there too, Outbound, probably for another 10 minutes, and then I'm going to have to shut her down for the night, but we can resume this maybe even tomorrow night or Monday. So go ahead.
Taylor, did you say that the ordering of the fossils is the best evidence?
I said it's pretty strong evidence. For me, it's one of the things that is convincing to me, because I mean, I objectively think that that the comparative anatomy is probably stronger evidence. But what I was trying to describe earlier is that for me, every time I question whether evolution is true, I always bump up against fossil layers, and I can't explain that in my mind. So that's why it's a easy creation slayer in my opinion.
But you do understand, Taylor, that these rock layers, all of them, I mean all of them, have ripple marks. Do you know that all of them have ripple marks?
And so?
So it means they were deposited by water, all of them. Ripple
not
marks.
All of them. There's not constant ripple marks everywhere.
There's also crossbeds. It's not only ripple marks, there are also crossbeds.
There were rivers back then. And a lot of it was sedimentation from rivers and bodies of water.
Huh?
A lot of the layers are sedimentation from rivers and bodies of water. But you think that it sorted everything by type and was also solidified into rock within, what, months?
By type? Are you saying that I think they were sorted by type? What do you mean type?
So, if you ever look at the floods and tsunamis that actually occur, things don't get sorted in layers. They get all mixed up in a solution. And that would be like expecting a tsunami to deposit layers that were organized by the garage items, and then living room items above that, and then kitchen items above that, and bathroom items above that, bedroom items above that, and all in separate hundreds feet thick solid rock forming in a matter of weeks.
But don't you see the geologic column can also be reinterpreted in a different way? That we could also look at it by ecosystem.
No, because we see every ecosystem in each layer.
Oh, that's right. That's my point. Because the flood model also predicted that these animals will be buried by ecosystems as the flood waters rose, starting from the oceans.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't agreeing with you. He was saying when you look within one layer, you see all of the ecosystems in one layer. Then when you move to another layer, you see all of them again in the one layer
Yeah,
again.
there's no marine layer or terrestrial layer.
Yeah,
What about the Cambrian layer? There are marine over there.
and plants.
Oh, so because they are shallow marine creatures, there are
And
plants
that's,
also.
but that's only found in the bottom
So
where all of the oldest rock is.
where the oldest rock is. The flood started in the
And then
ocean.
you see marine creatures throughout every layer.
Wait, Taylor, I already explained this to you in our last video. The flood started in the oceans. That is why marine creatures will be buried first.
But why
And
do
then
you also have marine creatures in upper layers?
That are
because
separated by species.
because the flood started in the oceans, and then as the layers progressed, there are still tsunamis from the oceans carrying these marine creatures to the other layers.
But
It
you
is
said that
the
they were
burden.
supposed to be in the bottom layer.
So that would carry terrestrial creatures to every layer just as well. It would just mix everything up.
No, it won't, because sharks, for example, are heavier than those shallow marine creatures, so they will be buried next.
Sharks?
For example,
Sharks have neutral buoyancy just like most sea creatures.
shallow marine creatures, right? First, and then there are these what do you call that? Deep sea marine creatures are next in the geologic column. Correct?
But they're conserved. We see marine creatures in every column.
Oh, so I already. You don't get it. A flood started in
You're
the.
flipping between these different models without synthesizing them.
Okay. So what we're going to do here, Jeremy, take some brief time, explain your position, and then we'll go right back to Taylor, who's going to give him his objections to your position, and then go from there. I think that'll make it more understandable than. Okay, go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay. The flood started in the oceans, right? The Bible said that. Okay. So the first waves of tsunami, these tsunamis don't need to be super high. Maybe like the Indonesian in 2003, it could start like that. Who knows? We don't know. But since these tsunamis would really weak at English. All right, which creatures live near the shores or the coasts? Shallow marine creatures, right? So
Humans
logic.
live near shores too.
What?
Humans live near shores too. That's one of their favorite spots.
No. According to the Bible, humans did live on higher elevations. There's actually Bible verses that said humans live on higher elevations. So
Yeah, but the
they were.
Bible is not evidence of anything.
We have a historical record here that humans did not live on the shores.
We wait a
But-
minute. We got to let Jeremy.
have-
go. Standing for Truth said he's going to get his time, and then you'll. And
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah, but it's okay. I want to have a free what's the English
oh,
word for this?
okay. Want to use your time that way? All right. Sorry.
Humans, according to the Bible, they live on a place, on a place where there are four rivers. And when you live on a place with four rivers, you know you're on higher ground, correct? But why can't I use the Bible as evidence? It is a historical record, and it helps me explain why humans are not in the bottom layer.
You have to independently confirm what the claim of the Bible is, because just because it's recorded doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah. The Bible said that the humans live on the higher layers, higher ground. So if
Well, Taylor, obviously, if we're building our model based on the assumption that Genesis is true, and Genesis is telling us that humans lived on a higher elevation, and that's consistent with the actual data, let's confront the data based on his model, because then we're.
a human, Bible said humans on higher ground, right? And what do we find?
So
What do we
no
find?
humans lived on the coasts in the time of the flood, is what
No,
you're
they
trying to tell me.
No, by default, I don't know if default is the correct English. The Bible said that humans live on higher ground, on four rivers. They say it said. And then, where do we find humans in the fossil, in the geologic column, on the top layer, exactly as predicted by the Bible?
But you do
So
realize people live like on the beach
that's today. You cannot
by the
apply
ocean,
what's
right?
today.
So what's the difference?
That's today. Okay, that was the pre-flood world was different. We don't know.
So you have to make
Because
an
the
assumption
Bible,
that no one lived by the beach, and you have to make an assumption that no mammals lived by the beach. And you're saying that the layers sort by environment, but then you say marine environments are expected in every level. You just flip-flopping everywhere.
of course, marine fossils are expected to be at every level because
What did you
the
say it sorts by environment?
for the other creatures like dinosaurs by ecosystems, by reptiles, and then those things, and then those sharks, and then those shallow marine creatures. Those
But
were
all
by
marine creatures can swim.
what?
All marine creatures can swim. So why are they behaving differently?
What? What?
Why are they being sorted differently?
Oh man. Because, like I said, the flood started in the oceans, and then those tsunamis will then go to where? Where will they go? The shores, right?
It's gonna
The
sweep. Have you ever actually seen a tsunami? It's gonna sweep everything up and mix it all up. At the
I am. I said the tsunami at first during the beginning of the flood may not be as high as you may think, right? What you are thinking right now. I said that you can rewind this video.
then the
Okay,
layers wouldn't be vertical; they would be in a concentric circle.
it what?
The layers would not be layered vertically; they would be in a concentric circle. You would see things buried around the edges of land, and then you'd see things buried more inland. That's not a vertical stack.
Yeah, that's what we see in the
If,
Grand
if you're
Canyon.
saying that things are buried where at their location, we'd only see vertical stacks if they're swept up and mixed up and then deposited. If they're buried at their present location,
You,
then
you are
we would expect to see concentric circles of burying.
you are forgetting the fact that these tsunamis are carrying sediments, and when they carry these sediments and are sweeping these shallow marine creatures, they will migrate these shallow marine creatures to a different location.
So it buries them at their location, then picks up that layer and deposits it on underneath the next layer that's more
They have to
inland.
go
How does that
somewhere.
make any sense?
They have to go somewhere, right? That is why we find.
Yeah, but
That is why we.
how
That
would it
is why we
put it
find.
underneath a layer?
Look at the Grand Canyon. We find almost every. That is why the Grand Canyon is gold to geologists because the rocks are exposed. We see we see the marine creatures there, and then the land creatures at the Grand Staircase, Grand Canyon marine creatures, Grand Staircase. Uh, those dinosaur fossils, right? Because the sediments would transport them to a particular location. That don't you get it, Taylor?
Uh, no, because if
Grand
they're buried
Canyon,
under sediment, it would be where they're hanging out at. Or are you saying that they're swept up by the flood? Or are they buried by the flood?
depends. The geologic column is not perfect everywhere. There are some missing layers and so on. I think you know that already.
But if
So
they're
some
buried
layers,
by the flood, then that means that they're buried at their location, which means that you would have to pick up that layer of loose sediment that hasn't had time to become a rock yet, and you have to place it underneath the more inland layers somehow
with the
by
correct
flooding
mixture, with the correct
without disturbing the layers.
with the correct mixture of ingredients, these sedimentary rocks can harden quickly. Don't you know that?
How quickly?
I don't know, less than a year maybe. Cement, for example, it hardens quickly, right?
So
So
the floodwaters somehow knew what was inside of these solidifying layers and then retroactively stack them on top of each other?
It transports them to a location first, and then the next waves will transport the next ecosystem. And because may I address the marine the entire geologic column has marine creatures first. Because the flood started in the oceans, and we're talking about tsunamis here, tsunamis there, tsunamis here, tsunamis there,
It doesn't.
all around the oceans.
Wait a
That
minute.
is why
Why
every
don't we see
layer,
trilobites in upper layers then?
Yeah, it doesn't just have marine creatures first. It has a specific set of marine creatures first.
yeah,
Progressively
And then
changing.
there's marine creatures in every layer after that. They're different species.
yes, because they were buried by ecosystem, and then the sediments transported them to a particular location. I think Taylor does not understand that the geologic column is not perfect. There are missing layers from one area to another. The only real perfect example of the geologic column, I mean everything from marine creatures to dinosaurs and humans is the Grand Canyon. And of course,
I don't think that's true.
Huh?
I've heard about other locations that have the same thing. Actually, I wish
No,
I could.
not as perfectly as the Grand Canyon. The canyon is perfect. The Grand Staircase. The dinosaurs are there in humans, and Grand Canyon are the marine creatures.
Where are the mammals?
In the Grand Staircase.
We know
Grand,
that
Grand Staircase. London, sorry. Taylor.
There's I just googled it. There's the entire geologic column can also be found at a location in North Dakota. And that's just a quick. I've heard about other locations too. There's more.
It's a more or less, but the most perfect part is really the Grand Canyon. You can ask any geologist about that. The best way to look for geologic columns.
I think the only reason it's more perfect there is because they don't have to do any digging. They can just see it already exposed.
Yeah, that's why other rock layers we have.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that there's not perfect examples elsewhere.
But I need to address Taylor's all layers have marine fossils thing. Of course, the flood started in the oceans, and then what is the primary mechanism for depositing these ecosystems and these layers? It is the floodwaters, right? Of course, there will still be marine fossils up to the end stages of the flood that are right.
Flood waters is not a mechanism. What behavior of the flood waters is a mechanism that results in sorting?
Are you telling me about the density here? I am not talking about the density, Taylor.
I'm asking you what the mechanism is.
I still want to know about the
flood water is not a mechanism.
I still want to know.
What do you mean mechanism?
I still want to know about
how it works.
Sorry.
I still want to know about how the like the trilobites and such on the bottom layer, that in locations like say mountain ranges that according to our theory were used to be underwater and now have raised up out of the water. Like by your theory with this flood, you're saying that they were picked up out of the ocean, carried over to this mountain, and then put underneath everything on that mountain?
Yes, because during the later stages of the flood, of course, when the first shallow marine creatures were buried, okay, are we 100% sure that everything, all the trilobites 100% have been buried in the first layer already? Are we 100% sure? It's a more or less. We're talking about more or less here. So some of them will
it's not
have
more
been
or less. They're always in that one layer. What do you? I mean that you don't find trilobites in a higher layer.
Yeah.
You just said there are trilobites on the mountains. Did you not?
Yeah, but
the lower layers are exposed.
Yeah, the mountains also have that bottom layer because those mountains used to not be mountains. Back during the time of the trilobites, those mountains were down under the ocean.
Yes,
So
yes, yeah, thank you. I understand that. According to our flood model, the mountains rose because you're assuming uniformitarianism, correct? And I don't blame you for that. It's okay. Because in our model that, for example, the layers are deposited right in this mountain here. No, no mountain yet because in our model there were no mountains yet before the flood. Okay, mountains only rose after the flood due to catastrophic plate tectonics, which I have no time to explain here. So when these layers are deposited right here, okay, let's say in the first layer, okay, in one layer like we guys agreed on, okay, and then geologic processes from the catastrophic plate tectonics of the flood would uplift these layers, okay? And when you uplift this layer, sorry, layer, not layers, layer, okay, then you will find these trilobites on a higher location because of the uplift on
um,
the good. And one more thing, guys, come on. Why are the trilobite fossils that we find? Why are their footprints always on a different elevate on a always higher than
I
the
just did a
trilobite fossils?
I just did a
Okay,
quick Google, and according to Deuteronomy and Genesis, both mountains, according to the Bible, there were mountains before the flood.
Yeah, do you know which
uh,
mountains are pre-flood and which mountains are post-flood?
hills, only hills. There were only hills before the flood.
No, it says mountains.
Oh, so all humans living in high places, it was just a small hill. Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, higher elevation.
So a hill. You're saying there were no real mountains,
Think of
so
it as
higher
a
elevations are just hills.
think of it as a plateau, a very don't we find for example today that only certain creatures live in certain places, don't we find that?
I mean, do you think dinosaurs and flying pterosaurs aren't capable of moving to higher ground?
Yes, of course, but they have
But,
not
but
no they
they're
don't
not
have
capable of it, but chickens and cows are. Where are they in the lower layers?
the chickens and cows are also in the plateau with humans. We
Only?
cannot think conventionally here. We have to think outside the box here. We don't know what the pre-flood world looks like, so we can only infer. And I admit, I am inferring.
We know
Okay.
there's
Oh,
wild ancestors to cows.
sorry.
We know that there's wild ancestors to cows that live away from humans.
Wild. Sorry, I am not following. What wild ancestors to cows?
Hmm.
What do you mean?
Like the aurochs, it's a cow,
I forgot what the
a
aurochs
wild
is.
cow,
So
and
what's your point? What's the point? I forgot about the aurochs thing. What's your point?
and wildebeest are pretty close.
To the dinosaur?
No, to cows.
Oh, so
The
what's
point
your
is that domesticated animals are also found in the wild in like non-domesticated form, but you guys admit that a cow is a cow, a dog is a dog, even if it's domesticated. A cat is a
so where?
cat, whether it's a lion or a domesticated cat.
So in short, Taylor, where the whatever the animal that you state? Which layer is it? In which layer is it?
Which animal?
Yeah, no. The cow. What is the other one you said the what?
The aurochs.
Yeah, where is it? Which layer is it?
Those were extant during like medieval times.
So they're on the top layer, correct?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so what's the problem there?
So they're wild, so they would be wandering around away from humans.
Oh, so if they're on the same elevation, if they're on the same elevation, they can also be on a different location, far apart.
Uh,
What's the problem there?
Modern animals wander around in all different locations. There are no modern day animals in the bottom layers. which you claim would be near the shores, but there are modern animals that live on the shores today.
Today, okay. Like I said, we don't know what the pre-flood world looks like. You cannot.
But you claim
You
to know
cannot
all this other stuff about it.
You cannot extrapolate what you see today and apply it into the past. That's uniformitarianism. You're using evolutionary uniformitarianism here. And I'm willing to admit I'm inferring.
You have to make more assumptions to get rid of uniformitarianism.
Like?
Well, for example, Newton's first law, a thing will keep moving unless it's stopped.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to infer that something is going to change unless you can point to the change.
Contamination. About the rocks that we talked about previously.
But that's just a speculation. You don't know what happened.
Uniformitarianism, everything becomes unintelligible anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to assume it. Otherwise, you can't make sense of anything.
Yeah, we can't do science without the assumptions. So I'm just pointing it out. For example, the Big Bang, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
you assume based on
it's not just that you assume it though. There's so much more than that.
There are testable predictions. I know.
Like rejecting it disproves itself, so it's necessarily absolute.
Yeah, but allow me to give you an example of the Big Bang. We infer that the Big Bang started from a singularity because of uniformitarianism. We see the universe expand, so when we trace back that expansion, we can trace it back to a point, correct? So that is uniformitarianism. But what if the universe, okay, I'm assuming God created the universe with some size and then let it expand from that size. See? There are ways.
So manatees live in shallow water, so why don't we see manatees in the supposed shallow water layers?
Did we not tackle this already? The Bible already said humans live on higher ground.
Manatees.
Huh?
Do you know what a manatee is?
I forgot. Tell me.
It's a sea cow, basically. Big fat whale looking thing.
Oh.
Look it up.
Where are they located?
I'll show you a picture. He said they're in shallow waters.
Oh, so no surprise that they're in the first few layers, correct?
No, they aren't.
These are manatees.
They're modern animals that are only found in the top layers.
I thought you said they were from the sea.
They are. They live in shallow waters, but we don't see what your model would predict, which is them in the shallow water layers, which you think are shallow water layers.
I already explained that. I said not everything will be picked up. It's a more or less. You pick most of them, okay, and deposit them in a certain location, but you don't pick them all up. The tsunami is not the tsunami don't work in magics that you would.
So that seems inconsistent to me. Like you're just
magic.
saying it works here, but not when I don't want it to.
Did it pick up the dinosaurs?
Or in one.
I mean, because the dinosaurs would be much heavier than a manatee.
Yeah, but the dinosaurs are already on land. They are not on the sea.
Yeah, but don't they have to be picked up in order to end up underneath?
The dinosaurs are in the human layer. Sorry, the human layer. The human.
Yeah, but don't you have to pick up the dinosaurs? Don't you have to pick up the dinosaurs in order to get all that sea life in the what are they called underneath them? The
What do you mean pick up the dinosaurs?
What are they called, Taylor? I forgot the name of them already.
I'm confused.
The early sea life is under the dinosaurs. So the dinosaurs would have to get picked up to get the early sea life underneath them. But the manatees, who are heavier than that sea life but lighter than the dinosaurs, somehow get missed.
It is a more or less. Like I said, the tsunamis are not magic that it can pick
Well, it seems like
everything.
there would have to be magic to do that. There's no
Well, tsunamis can pick up cars.
I mean, how could it miss
Wait.
every? How could it miss
Where is
absolute-
the what? See what again? Where is it again?
missing, picking up thousands and thousands of the early sea life, thousands and thousands of dinosaurs, but missing every single manatee on the planet seems like magic to me.
Mm-hmm.
So there are whatever in the dinosaur layer.
No,
Sea
they're
cow.
underneath the dinosaur. You would have to pick up the dinosaurs to stick them underneath the dinosaurs. You'd have to pick up the sea life from the ocean and pick up the dinosaurs, stick the sea life under the dinosaurs, and somehow totally miss all the manatees.
But in the Grand Canyon, we do find an entire population of nautiloids only in one layer. So, because it depends, maybe they live in a different parts of the ocean. Why not? Are we assuming they all live together in one place? That is not a very good assumption, right?
Well,
There are nautiloid population in the Grand Canyon, somewhere in the lower layers, and then they're devoid of other shallow marine creatures too. So geologists have assumed that these nautiloids live on a different location from the other shallow marine creatures. I don't understand the problem here.
But we're only seeing a specific type in a specific place. But we do actually see communities of sea creatures who live together in the same location.
Yeah.
And then in each layer, we see sea creatures and terrestrial creatures.
Oh, what's the problem there?
Except for the very earliest layers.
Oh, what's the problem? Can you please point me the problem, Taylor?
Well, with the creationist model, you would expect to see a lot more mixing.
Yeah.
And less conformity between the species in each layer.
Well, I would agree that we might expect more mixing, but we have no idea how the pre-flood world looks like. Okay, for example, a tidal wave suddenly hits Manila. I live in Manila, Philippines. Okay, that's why my English is not so good. A tidal wave hits the city of Manila. Okay. What would you expect to be fossilized, Taylor? When a tsunami with sediments hits Manila, what would you expect? What would you?
We don't see fossils from tsunamis.
Huh?
I wouldn't expect any fossils, and I certainly wouldn't expect vertical layers.
I don't hear your answering question. But you're not.
Ask again, then.
Well, never mind. Let's just move away from that.
Do you want to talk about like radiometric dating?
We already did.
I got something I can ask you.
So guys, I'm gonna step in here. I think that would actually be a good place to end it there, since we kind of covered that in great detail. It's been fun. I'm down to do this again in the next few days. Maybe Outbound Man and myself can have a nice back and forth on modern day debate within the next little while. But guys, thanks for joining in on the after show. Hope everybody enjoyed Taylor and I our debate. Until we meet again, guys, everybody have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.
For all those who appreciate the work that we're doing here on Standing for Truth, please hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.